The lights inside the Georgetown auditorium glowed like a stage prepared for a political spectacle, and everyone knew exactly who the star villains and heroes were supposed to be. The event, Women in Power, a conversation on America's future, was meant to be a calm policy forum. But the moment Karoline Leavitt walked through the doors, cameras pivoted, whispers ignited, and the crowd's energy shifted like a storm front rolling in. She was 27, sharp as a blade, calm as a soldier before battle. Her navy blazer held its familiar symbol, a small silver cross tucked subtly at the collar, a quiet reminder of exactly who she was and who she refused to become. Across the room, Hillary Clinton stood surrounded by staffers, the practiced smile never leaving her face. She noticed Karoline instantly. Her expression tightened, just enough for the cameras to miss it, just enough for Karoline to catch it. Hillary had spent decades dominating rooms like this. Now, one young spokeswoman, barely older than some college interns, was pulling attention away from her. Karoline took her seat on the panel, placing her notes on the table. She didn't need them, but she brought them to send one message. I'm prepared. For all of it. The moderator opened the discussion with routine questions. Economic policy, crime, social shifts. Hillary answered like someone reading from a script she'd memorized 20 years ago. Karoline responded with crisp, modern clarity, stats, lived reality, and a tone that made even those who disagreed lean forward to hear more. Then it happened. The moderator turned to Hillary. Secretary Clinton, you've said recently that some rising figures on the conservative side are a threat to democracy and women's progress. Who exactly did you mean? Hillary's eyes flashed and she didn't hesitate. Well, she began, when you have individuals, young, ambitious, and frankly radicalized, who parrot extremist narratives without understanding the consequences. Yes, that becomes a threat. And Karoline here, she gestured openly, is a perfect example. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The cameras swiveled. The stage transformed from a panel to a battleground. Karoline didn't blink. She looked Hillary dead in the eye, steady, almost amused. She could feel the heat of the audience's anticipation pressing in on her, could sense the clips already being cut for social media. Hillary continued, voice sharpening. She spreads misinformation, undermines institutions, and represents the type of political figure that endangers everything women have fought for. The moderator stiffened, unsure how to redirect. Karoline slowly adjusted her microphone. Her jaw set, not in anger, but in resolve. She knew Hillary wasn't just attacking her. She was attacking youth, faith, independence, and every woman who refused to fall in line with the political elite. The crowd waited. Karoline inhaled, then said in a calm, cutting voice, Secretary Clinton, if I'm a threat, it's only because people like you have spent years hiding things you never wanted the American public to see. The room froze. Half the panelists shifted uncomfortably. The other half leaned forward, unable to look away. Hillary's face tightened, not with anger this time, but with recognition. She knew exactly what Karoline was referring to, and she knew it was only the beginning. Karoline wasn't there to survive Hillary Clinton. She was there to expose her. The room didn't quiet down. It tightened. The energy inside the Georgetown Forum shifted the second Hillary Clinton leaned toward her microphone, chin raised, voice sharpened like a blade polished for years. Karoline Leavitt, she said slowly, each syllable dripping with political theater, isn't just reckless. She's dangerous, a threat to democratic stability. Gasps, murmurs, phones lifting. Hillary knew exactly what she was doing, dropping a line heavy enough to dominate headlines before breakfast. A seasoned veteran of Washington warfare, she delivered it with the confidence of someone who'd survived every scandal, every hearing, every interrogation. Her eyes never left Karoline's face, but Karoline didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She didn't even shift in her seat. She simply let the words hang there, like smoke waiting for a gust of wind. Across the stage, several panelists stared at Hillary with a mixture of admiration and nervousness. They could practically feel the aftershocks of the accusation rolling across the audience. Hillary smiled faintly, sensing momentum, sensing victory. She added, "We've seen voices like hers before, loud, divisive, careless with facts, and we all know where that leads." The moderator swallowed hard. Karoline finally lifted her chin. Not fast, not defensive. Controlled, measured. The room locked onto her like she carried the nuclear codes. "Secretary Clinton," Karoline said, voice clear enough to slice through the tension. "If speaking the truth makes me a threat, I wonder what that makes you." Hillary froze. A 2-second delay, barely noticeable but enough for the audience to feel it. Karoline continued, still calm, still steady. "You've spent years telling Americans that transparency matters, that accountability matters. Yet every time someone asks questions about your decisions, your emails, your foreign dealings, your private speeches, you dismiss them as attacks or misinformation." Phones shot up everywhere. Someone whispered, "Oh God, she's going there." Hillary's jaw tightened. Karoline wasn't finished. "I didn't come here to insult you," she said. "I came here because young women like me are tired of being told that questioning powerful people, especially powerful women, is somehow a danger to democracy." A few members of the audience clapped, before catching themselves. Karoline leaned slightly forward. "You built a career preaching that women should speak up, but apparently that only applies when we agree with you." A ripple rolled through the entire venue. Hillary opened her mouth to respond, but Karoline pressed on, her voice steady, unshaken. "And since you brought up threats, maybe the real threat is when those in power hide things from the American people. Maybe the real threat is pretending accountability is only for others." The moderator glanced at Hillary, then at Karoline, then back at Hillary, who now sat perfectly still, lips pressed together, calculating, wounded but refusing to show it. Karoline sat back in her chair, eyes steady. The momentum had flipped, completely. The crowd knew it. Hillary felt it. Karoline owned it. And the atmosphere of the hall would never return to its previous state. The studio lights glared hotter than usual, as if they sensed the tension rising before anyone spoke it aloud. Karoline Leavitt sat poised in her chair, chin lifted, fingers locked calmly on the table before her. Across from her, Hillary Clinton adjusted her blazer with the ease of someone who believed she owned every room she entered. The moderator barely finished introducing the segment when Hillary leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "She is a threat," Hillary said, her voice carrying a sharp edge that sliced straight through the audience chatter. "Not because she's strong, not because she's capable, but because she spreads misinformation and destabilizes trust in our institutions." A few people in the audience gasped. Cameras zoomed in. Social media comment bubbles were already popping off screen. Karoline didn't flinch. She'd been called worse by people far more powerful. Hillary wasn't finished. "Young people like her," she added, "don't understand the consequences of their reckless rhetoric. They divide more than they build." Karoline felt the pressure settle on the stage, not on her shoulders but on Hillary's words hanging in the air like smoke. Hillary expected her to shrink, to defend herself timidly, to react emotionally. Instead, Karoline inhaled slowly and let silence do the work. Silence always terrified the guilty. Then she looked directly into the camera. "Mrs. Clinton," she said calmly, "if speaking the truth makes me a threat, then maybe the problem isn't me." A subtle wave rippled through the crowd. Karoline continued, her tone measured and devastatingly precise. "You accuse me of dividing people, but there's something you're avoiding. Something Americans remember even if you hope they've forgotten." Hillary stiffened for the first time. Karoline leaned forward slightly, voice dropping just low enough to force everyone to listen. "For years, You preached transparency while hiding the one thing every American had the right to know. The decisions you made behind closed doors, that shaped national security, foreign policy, and public trust. The room went still. Even the moderator blinked at her, unsure if he should intervene. Karoline didn't stop. "You want to call me a threat?" she said. "Fine, but the only reason you see me that way is because I'm not afraid to say what others tiptoe around. Your biggest legacy isn't leadership. It's secrecy." A murmur swept the audience like a sudden gust of wind. Cameras swung wildly to capture Hillary's expression. Jaw tight, lips pressed together, eyes burning. Karoline finished with a line she knew would detonate online. "And unlike you, I don't hide my emails, my intentions, or my accountability from the American people." The audience erupted, some cheering, some stunned, some covering their mouths in disbelief. Hillary blinked rapidly, caught off guard by the precision of the hit. She expected a defensive answer, not a direct strike at the weakest part of her political history. The moderator tried to regain control. "Ladies, let's—" But the moment was already gone. The clip was destined to go viral within minutes. Karoline sat back, calm as ever, while Hillary tried to collect herself. For the first time in years, someone had told Hillary Clinton no, and done it in front of millions. The lights inside the CNN debate hall dimmed slightly as the commercial break ended. Hillary Clinton straightened her blazer, forcing a calm expression, but the tension clinging to her eyes was impossible to hide. She had spent the last several minutes whispering instructions to her aide, her jaw tight, her posture stiff. Karoline Leavitt, standing alone at her podium across the stage, didn't flinch. She kept her gaze forward, fingers resting lightly on her notes, though she hadn't needed to look at them once. The moderator's voice returned. "Welcome back. Before the break, Secretary Clinton claimed that Karoline Leavitt poses a national threat. Ms. Leavitt, you were not allowed to finish responding. You now have the floor." A soft ripple moved through the audience. Anticipation, curiosity, maybe a little dread. Karoline inhaled once, lifted her chin, and faced Hillary directly. "Secretary Clinton," she began, her voice steady but sharp, "you've spent decades accusing everyone who challenges you of being a threat to your legacy, to your narrative, to your power. But being questioned is not persecution." Hillary forced a smile. It didn't reach her eyes. Karoline continued, stepping out from behind her podium, bold, deliberate. "You said I'm dangerous because I'm young, outspoken, and refuse to bend to Washington's elite. But the truth is simpler. I am a threat, because I don't fear you." Gasps erupted through the audience. Cameras zoomed in. Hillary blinked rapidly, her expression cracking for the first time. Karoline held up a stack of documents, thick, tabbed, impossible to ignore. "You called me a threat, but these," she shook the stack lightly, "are the real threats. Classified briefings you ignored, security failures your office buried, internal memos your team hoped the public would never see." Hillary leaned toward her microphone. "Those documents are misinterpreted." Karoline raised a hand. "No, they're timestamps, signatures, directives, warnings, and they all have one thing in common." She paused, letting the room breathe the silence. "Your name is on everyone." The audience murmured, louder, sharper, restless. Karoline walked back to her podium, her heels striking the floor with the confidence of someone who knew she had just detonated a political bomb. "You spent years shaping a story where you're the victim of misinformation. But the truth was never lost. It was hidden. By you. And now, the American people deserve to hear what you worked so hard to keep quiet." Hillary's face drained of color. Her aide scrambled behind the curtain. The moderator looked stunned, unsure whether to intervene or sit back and witness history unfold. Karoline finished with a clean, devastating line. "You called me a threat. But tonight, Secretary Clinton, The only thing threatened is your version of the truth." The audience erupted. Cheers from some, stunned silence from others. Even those who disliked Karoline couldn't deny what they'd just felt. A seismic shift on live television. The studio lights dimmed just slightly, enough for the cameras to tighten their frame on Karoline as she stepped forward, heels striking the stage like a countdown to impact. Hillary Clinton stood across from her, arms crossed, chin raised, wearing that familiar expression, the practiced blend of superiority and irritation she'd perfected over decades of political battle. But tonight, something was different. Hillary wasn't controlling the moment. She was surviving it. "You call me a threat to democracy," Karoline said, voice steady, the room hanging on to every syllable. "But the only thing I threaten is the comfort of people who never expected someone like me to speak up." Hillary let out a cold laugh. "Please, you're a mouthpiece, a child reading talking points written for you." That was the moment Karoline had been waiting for. She lifted a thin folder from the podium and held it up for the cameras. "Then, explain this," she said, her tone sharp enough to slice through the air. "Because these aren't talking points. These are your words, Secretary Clinton." A murmur erupted across the audience. Hillary stiffened. Karoline opened the folder slowly, deliberately, letting the tension tighten like wire. "For years, you called the private server a mistake. You blamed staff. You said you never sent classified information." She tapped the folder. "But the documents you signed say otherwise." Hillary's smile evaporated. Karoline continued, her voice gaining force. "The American people were told everything was handled, everything was explained, everything was transparent." She closed the folder with a snap. "But nothing was transparent. You hid it, and you hid it because you knew exactly what you were doing." Gasps scattered through the studio. The moderator tried to step in, but Karoline didn't slow. "You call me dangerous? I'm 27. I've never destroyed evidence. I've never misled Congress. I've never threatened whistleblowers, and I've never, ever put national security at risk to protect myself." Hillary's jaw clenched so hard the cameras caught it. Karoline stepped even closer, her voice lower now, more lethal. "You built a political empire on silence, on closed doors, on hiding what the country had the right to know, and the minute someone younger, louder, and unafraid stands up, suddenly we're the threat." The audience exploded. Cheers, applause, shouts echoing through the room. Even some who came in skeptical now saw it clearly. Hillary was on her heels, and Karoline had seized the narrative. Hillary leaned into her mic, forcing confidence into a voice that wasn't steady. "This is nonsense." "No," Karoline said, cutting her off cleanly. "This is the truth you never expected to face from someone you couldn't bully." The room shook again with applause. Hillary looked away, blinking rapidly, as if searching for an escape line. Karoline ended the moment with a single devastating sentence. "You say I'm a threat, Secretary Clinton. Maybe I am. To the world you spent years trying to hide." And the studio erupted. The studio felt different now. Tense, electric, as if the lights themselves sensed the shift in power. Hillary Clinton had entered the debate with the confidence of someone who'd spent 30 years owning every room she walked into. But for the first time tonight there was a flicker behind her eyes. Something uncertain. Something she hadn't felt in years. Karoline had pushed her into unfamiliar territory. Hillary tried to regain ground, stepping closer to the podium. "You can throw talking points all night," she said, voice sharp. "But the truth is simple. People like you, young, inexperienced, easily manipulated, are the reason misinformation thrives. You are a threat because you don't understand how dangerous your words can be." The word threat echoed through the studio like a slap. Karoline didn't raise her voice. Instead, she lifted her chin, letting the silence thicken. "Dangerous?" she repeated. "No, Secretary Clinton. What's dangerous is pretending the American people forgot what you did." A gasp rippled across the audience. Karoline stepped forward, her posture steady, her tone slicing through the tension like ice. You say I'm manipulated, but my record is public, transparent, and earned. Yours? She paused, long enough for every camera in the room to zoom in. Yours includes Benghazi, missing emails, foreign donations funneled through the Clinton Foundation, and a political machine built on intimidation. You want to talk about danger? Start there. Hillary's jaw froze. She gripped the podium, knuckles whitening. Karoline continued, her voice gaining strength with every word. You call me inexperienced, but maybe it's time someone without your decade-long list of scandals spoke up. Someone who hasn't spent her life hiding things from the American people. The audience erupted. Cheers, shouts, an energy shift so powerful Hillary blinked in surprise. Karoline didn't let up. You say I'm a threat? Good, because the truth should threaten people who spent their careers controlling it. Hillary's expression shifted. Annoyance, disbelief, something dangerously close to panic. She hadn't expected this. She wasn't used to being challenged by someone young enough to be her intern, let alone someone who refused to bow. Karoline delivered the final blow with quiet strength. You hid the truth for years. I just read it out loud. The room exploded. Hillary stared at her like she was seeing her for the first time. Not a Gen Z staffer, not a political rookie, but an opponent she was rapidly losing control over. And Karoline stood there, composed, unwavering, fully aware. The turning point had arrived, and Hillary Clinton was no longer the most powerful voice in the room. Hillary Clinton had been in countless battles, Senate hearings, presidential debates, global negotiations, yet nothing about Karoline Leavitt's rise felt predictable. And on that stage, under the bright lights, Hillary finally sensed something she hadn't felt in years. She had underestimated her opponent. The moderator turned toward Hillary. Secretary Clinton, would you like to respond to Karoline's claim that you hid information from the public? Hillary adjusted her blazer, forcing a confident smile. Karoline is young. She's passionate, but passion isn't evidence. I've spent my life serving this country, and I won't be lectured on transparency by someone who just entered politics. Karoline didn't move, didn't blink. She simply lifted a folder, thick, tabbed, organized. I didn't bring passion tonight, Karoline said. I brought documents. A wave of murmurs spread through the crowd. Hillary's smile faded. Karoline opened the folder, pulling out a single sheet. This is a 2015 internal memo from a Clinton advisor acknowledging the mishandling of classified information and the political strategy to downplay it. The public never saw this version. The audience gasped. Hillary stiffened. Karoline continued, her tone sharp but controlled. You call me inexperienced, Secretary Clinton, but your experience seems to include hiding problems instead of fixing them. Hillary leaned forward, voice tight. That memo is taken out of context. Karoline stepped closer, closing the gap between them. Then explain the context, right now, in front of millions. Silence. The moderator swallowed hard. Even the cameras zoomed in as Hillary's eyes darted, calculating, cornered. Karoline delivered the blow softly, which somehow made it hit harder. You said I'm a threat. Maybe I am. Not to America, but to the way politics used to work. The line hit like a detonation. Cheers erupted, phones lifted. The crowd leaned entirely toward Karoline now. Hillary's posture faltered. Not fully defeated, but shaken in a way she hadn't shown publicly in decades. Karoline held the stage with effortless authority, and Hillary, for the first time that night, understood. This wasn't the young woman she thought she could swat away. This was the woman millions were beginning to listen to. For the first time that night, Hillary Clinton felt something she hadn't expected to feel on a stage she believed she owned. The room pulling away from her. The crowd didn't lean toward her anymore. They leaned toward Karoline, hungry for whatever the 27-year-old would fire next. Even the cameras seemed to shift in her direction, as if instinctively sensing who now carried the momentum. Hillary tried to regain control. She straightened her blazer, lifted her chin, and adopted the commanding tone that once dominated entire election cycles. "Karoline," she said, "your generation has been manipulated by dangerous leaders. You're a product of misinformation, and frankly, a threat to the stability we've worked decades to build." It was meant to sound sharp, presidential. Instead, it sounded defensive. Karoline didn't step back. She stepped forward, closing the space between them with the confidence of someone who had already dismantled every argument thrown her way. "Secretary Clinton," she replied evenly. "If telling the truth is a threat to your stability, then maybe the problem isn't my generation. Maybe the problem is what you've been hiding." A ripple ran through the audience. People shifted in their seats. Phones came up. Hillary stiffened. Karoline continued, voice steady, surgical. "You accuse us of being misinformed, yet you're the one who deleted 33,000 emails. You're the one who called half the country deplorable. You're the one who spent years blaming everyone but yourself every time something went wrong, and now you want to call me the threat?" Hillary tried to interject, but Karoline was already rolling. Calm, relentless. "You say I'm manipulated? No. I think for myself. I speak for myself. And unlike you, I don't need a political machine behind me to defend every mistake I've made." A low murmur swelled. Hillary's jaw tightened. Karoline finished with the line that snapped the entire audience awake. "You built a career on secrecy, and you're terrified of a generation that wasn't around to protect you. We don't owe you silence. We don't owe you loyalty. And we definitely don't owe you fear." The crowd erupted. Cheers, whistles, camera flashes. Hillary blinked, caught off guard by the ferocity of the reaction. For the first time, she realized the truth. This wasn't her era anymore. This wasn't her room. And Karoline Leavitt, young, unfiltered, unbothered, had just stolen the stage she spent decades trying to control. Hillary Clinton sat back in her chair, smoothing the sleeve of her blazer as if the fabric could steady the tremor of frustration building beneath her polished expression. The moderator turned to her, hoping she might recover the moment Karoline had just shattered with her exposé. Cameras zoomed in. Hillary cleared her throat, lifting her chin with that familiar tone of superiority. "Karoline," she began, voice steady but undeniably strained, "you're misrepresenting decades of public service. You've taken pieces of history out of context to score applause. That might work for social media, but it's not how governing works." Some in the audience clapped, hesitant, scattered, more out of habit than conviction. Karoline didn't even blink. "Hillary," she replied calmly, "context is exactly what you avoid. That's why the truth keeps coming back to haunt you." A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Hillary pressed on, trying to regain footing. "You can criticize my decisions, but I've spent my life fighting for democracy, for women, for global stability." Karoline stepped forward. "And hiding everything that contradicts that story." The studio snapped, silent again. Karoline continued, her voice low, precise, each word landing like a controlled strike. "You say you defend democracy, but when Americans asked questions, your servers disappeared. When Benghazi families begged for answers, you gave speeches. When classified files leaked, you dismissed it as a mistake, and now you stand here telling me I'm the threat." A shockwave hit the audience. Gasps, hands over mouths, sudden applause erupting from the back rows. Hillary stiffened, eyes narrowing. "That's enough," she said sharply. "You're spreading misinformation." "No," Karoline said, cutting her cleanly. "I'm repeating your own record. And the reason the crowd reacts this way isn't because I twist facts. It's because they remember." The applause grew louder, stronger this time. Karoline leaned in just slightly, delivering the line that made the room erupt. "You didn't fear me because I'm wrong, Hillary. You feared me because I'm finally saying out loud what millions already know." Hillary's face froze, jaw tight, eyes fixed forward. And the crowd? They were no longer deciding who to believe. They had already chosen. The studio lights dimmed as the final segment began, but the tension in the room only sharpened. Hillary Clinton sat stiffly, arms crossed, that familiar half-smile frozen on her face, the one she used whenever she felt a loss slipping through her fingers. Karoline Leavitt, however, looked calm, almost collected, even after 9 rounds of verbal warfare that had left Hillary visibly shaken. Hillary tried one last time to rewrite the narrative. "Karoline," she began, voice tight, "your entire career is built on attacking women like me, strong women, women who've spent decades fighting for democracy. You are a threat, not because you're powerful, but because you're reckless." The audience shifted uneasily. It was the same line Hillary had used against half the country for years. But Karoline didn't hesitate. She stepped toward the microphone, her voice steady, piercing, unshakable. "Secretary Clinton, the only thing I threaten is the comfortable silence that protected you for decades." Gasps rippled across the room. Karoline continued, her tone rising with controlled force. "You say you fought for democracy, but you spent your career hiding the truth. Classified emails, failed foreign policy, backroom deals that hurt everyday Americans. You accuse me of being reckless, but the recklessness was yours long before I ever stepped into politics." Hillary's smile finally cracked. "And here's the difference between us," Karoline added. "I don't hide behind power, I challenge it." The audience erupted, applause swelling, some rising to their feet as Hillary shifted back in her chair, visibly rattled. Karoline delivered the finishing blow. "You called me a threat. You're right, I am. Not to democracy, but to the political machine that protected you. And tonight, the American people saw exactly why." Hillary's expression hardened, but she didn't respond. She couldn't. The moderator stepped in, stunned. "Well, I think that speaks for itself." The crowd cheered even louder. Karoline turned, walking off the stage with the confidence of someone who hadn't just won a debate, but ended an era. And across the country the message spread instantly. Karoline didn't just expose Hillary, she replaced her.